At Easter brunch, my sister asked, "How was the Fiji wellness retreat I booked for you guys?" I burst out laughing. "The what retreat?" Behind me, my husband Michael's face twitched. Tara looked confused though, pulling out her phone. "The marriage counseling package I've been paying for?" "Tara, he has MS, not marriage issues. We're perfectly fine." Her face darkened, scrolling through her banking app with growing horror. "What? I've been paying $3,000 monthly for counseling for 18 months. The one where they send you on holiday each month for bonding time." She turned the screen toward me, each transaction a knife. "That's $54,000. Michael's photos filled the screen, all of him tanned on golden beaches. Every month. He said you'd grown cold since the wedding, that losing you would kill him. "You went to Fiji," I whispered, "while you told me the disease hurt so bad that you couldn't even walk?" The Easter brunch crowd fell silent, champagne flutes suspended mid-toast. I checked the dates of his retreats against my calendar. March 15th, his bad reaction day. April 8th, emergency extended treatment. May 23rd, when the nerve pain was unbearable. Call it woman's intuition, but that's when it all clicked. "You've been stealing Tara's money while I culled myself paying for treatments that don't exist. It's not what it looks like." Michael's voice, usually weak with fabricated pain, was now strong. "I was already scrolling through our joint account. Every Thursday, $3,000 withdrawn. The same days I'd eat crackers for lunch to save money. I thought of last Tuesday, standing in the pharmacy, choosing between his pain medication and my antidepressants." Tara's hands shook as she showed more texts. "He said you blamed him for getting sick, that you resented being a caretaker. I wanted to help save your marriage while he fought MS." The photos kept coming. Michael parasailing, the man who told me stairs were agony, scuba diving, when I'd installed grab bars in our shower, dancing at beach bars, while I researched wheelchair-accessible homes. I remembered March 15th, Lily's 7th birthday. I'd made her cake from a box mix, no frosting, budget constraints. Told her sick daddies needed expensive medicine more than parties. She'd hugged me, said she didn't need presents if it helped daddy walk again. That night, according to the timestamps, he was at a 5-star resort steakhouse. The Thursdays blurred together. Me, dropping him at the medical center at noon, watching him shuffle in with his cane, the performance starting the moment we left home. 8 hours of imagining him hooked to IVs, fighting to keep his body functioning. The extra $500 a month could have meant real groceries, but Michael needed me available for medical emergencies. "Your mother," Tara choked out. "She took out a second mortgage, thought she was buying her son-in-law time." Mom, who'd aged 10 years in 2, watching her daughter become a caregiver at 32, who'd pressed her life savings into my hands last Christmas, tears streaming, for whatever treatments might help. I found myself laughing as the only way not to cry. "Remember April 8th, Michael? Dad's funeral? My father, who'd died thinking his son-in-law was dying too, who'd whispered from his hospital bed that at least Michael would take care of his little girl. I'd buried him alone, told everyone Michael was too ill to attend. He was jet skiing that day." Lily's voice echoed in my memory. "Mommy, when Daddy's legs work again, can we go to Disney?" I'd promised her yes, when Daddy was better. She'd been saving her allowance, quarters in a jar labeled Daddy's medicine, $23.16 from a 7-year-old who believed her father was dying. Last week, I'd sold my grandmother's pearl necklace, my something old at our wedding. The pawn shop gave me $400, 2 days of treatment. Michael had held me while I sobbed, promised we'd buy it back when he got better. There was no getting better. There was no sick. "The kids think you're dying." Each word tasted like poison. "Jake asked if he could give you his blood." Tara's face had gone from shock to something harder. She was texting rapidly, her jaw set. "That's enough," she said quietly. "This ends today." "Tara, what are you?" She looked up, her eyes blazing with protective fury. I said enough! Standing abruptly, she addressed the restaurant. "Excuse me, everyone. We're about to have a family intervention. You might want to move your tables back." Michael's face drained of color. "What did you do?" "Mom's outside with Uncle Tony and the cousins. Family meeting." The restaurant door opened. 8 relatives filed in. Michael's mother led them. "We know everything, son." She held bank statements. "You stole from your own family." They surround our table. "Grandma's house goes in Tara's name today, or we tell everyone at your firm." Michael's face went completely white while his mother spread the bank statements across our table, covering the Easter brunch plates with evidence of his theft. The restaurant went dead quiet as Uncle Tony moved to block the exit, his huge frame filling the doorway while the cousins formed a tight circle around our table. Michael tried to stand, but his legs buckled. Real weakness this time from pure panic instead of his usual performance, and he grabbed the table edge to steady himself. His mother's voice cut through his stammering excuses like a knife. "Sign the deed transfer now, or we call your boss while you're sitting here." I pulled out my phone and started recording everything as Michael's shaking hands signed the property transfer documents that Tara produced from her purse. The other diners were openly staring now, some recording on their own phones, and Michael kept his head down trying to avoid being recognized by anyone who might know him from work. His signature looked nothing like normal, all shaky lines and uneven letters as he signed page after page while his mother stood over him. As soon as the papers were signed, I grabbed my purse and walked out with Tara, leaving Michael surrounded by his furious family who were still closing in on him. My hands shook as I got in my car, but for the first time in months, I could breathe without that crushing weight on my chest. Tara followed me home in her car, and we sat in my kitchen while I called the bank to freeze our joint account. The representative explained I couldn't lock him out completely since it was joint, but I could withdraw my half immediately and open a new solo account, which I did right there on the phone. That afternoon, Tara and I drafted a careful email to Michael's firm's HR department requesting a meeting about a serious matter involving an employee. We avoided details that could be seen as defamation, but made it clear this was urgent, attaching just enough documentation to get their attention. I scheduled an emergency consultation with attorney Alistair Kapoor for for the next morning, using money from the account I just separated, and when Tara offered to come with me for support, I was accepted gratefully. That evening, Michael showed up at the house, banging on the door and alternating between apologies and threats to hurt himself if I didn't let him in. I called Tara and put her on speaker, which made him back down and leave when she threatened to call the police if he didn't get off my property immediately. The next morning, Michael's mother called, offering to pay back some of the money from selling family property, but only if I didn't pursue criminal charges against her son. I told her I needed to speak with my attorney first, buying myself time to think about what would be best for the kids. Later that day, I packed bags for Lily and Jake and took them to my mother's house for a few days, telling them Daddy needed some space to get better. They were confused but trusted me, and my mom held me while I cried after they went to bed, both of us exhausted from everything that had happened. The next morning, I drove back home to pack Michael's clothes and personal items into boxes for the garage. I pulled open his dresser drawers and grabbed armfuls of shirts, dumping them into cardboard boxes without folding them. Behind the dresser, I noticed a manila folder that had fallen between the furniture and the wall. The label read, "Retreat Concierge," in Michael's handwriting, and my hands shook as I opened it. Inside were dozens of printed pages showing flight confirmations, hotel bookings, and restaurant reservations. Every single trip was documented with receipts for spa treatments, golf games, and five-star dining experiences. The dates matched perfectly with his supposed medical treatments, and each itinerary showed activities like jet skiing and parasailing. I photographed every page with my phone while tears ran down my face. Tara called while I was still sorting through the papers, and I told her what I'd found. She said she'd been checking her email and discovered something worse. Michael had added himself to her travel rewards account, using her email as an emergency contact. The account showed 284,000 points accumulated from all the trips he'd taken with her money. Those points were worth at least 4 more luxury vacations that he could book anytime. She screenshot everything and forwarded it to me while we were still on the phone. My email pinged with a message from Eva Bianchi at Michael's company responding to our earlier contact. She scheduled an investigative interview for Tuesday morning and requested we bring any documentation we had. Her tone was professional, but I could tell from her careful wording that she was taking this seriously. She mentioned that falsifying medical leave documents was a federal offense, and the company had zero tolerance. That afternoon, I met with attorney Alistair Kapoor in his downtown office while Tara watched the kids. He spread out forms across his conference table and explained each one in simple terms. First, we'd file for legal separation to protect my assets from any debts Michael might create. There's something really strange about how Michael's been running this whole fake illness scheme for 18 months without anyone catching on until now. I'm curious why Tara never questioned sending thousands directly to Michael instead of actual medical facilities or doctors. Then we'd cancel all joint credit cards and move any accessible funds to new accounts. The temporary custody petition would ensure Michael couldn't take the kids without permission. The list felt huge, but Alistair numbered each task and promised we'd handle them one by one. That evening, my phone buzzed with a long email from Michael admitting to what he called poor judgment. He blamed depression and anxiety for making him create this elaborate lie about being sick. He claimed the trips were his only escape from the pressure of pretending to have MS. The twisted logic made me laugh out loud in my empty kitchen. He was stressed from pretending to be sick, so he needed vacations to recover from his fake illness. I forwarded the email to Alistair, who said it was basically a written confession we could use. Lying in bed that night, I couldn't sleep and started remembering our early years together. Michael always found reasons why my friends weren't good enough or why family gatherings were too stressful. Sarah from college had warned me he was controlling, but Michael convinced me she was jealous. My cousin Beth stopped inviting us to things after Michael caused drama at her wedding. The pattern was right there the whole time, but I couldn't see it. He'd charm everyone at first, then slowly cut me off from anyone who might question him. The next morning, I drove to the police station to file a report about the fraud. The desk officer listened to my story and looked at my documents but shook his head. He explained that most of this fell under civil law since Tara had willingly given the money. The only criminal angle might be the employment fraud with the fake medical documents. He suggested focusing on that aspect and gave me a case number for reference. 2 days later, I met with Janie Verma, a therapist who specialized in helping families through trauma. She had toys and books in her office for working with children about difficult topics. We sat together practicing how I'd explain to Lily and Jake that their father had been lying. She helped me find simple words that wouldn't destroy their relationship with him completely. We role-played different responses they might have, from anger to confusion to blaming themselves. Janie assured me kids were resilient, but they needed honest information delivered with love. That weekend, my mother came over and we spread her bank statements across my dining table. The second mortgage payment was eating up most of her Social Security check each month. She'd have to work until she was 70 just to keep the house she'd lived in for 30 years. We made a budget showing how I could contribute once the separation was finalized and support payments started. We both knew it wouldn't be enough to really fix the damage, but it was something. Meanwhile, Tara was calling family members about the plan to transfer Grandma's house to her name. Several cousins were angry, saying it wasn't fair to punish the whole family for Michael's crimes. Our cousin David said Michael was still family and deserved forgiveness. Tara's voice got louder as she argued that Michael had stolen enough from the family already. The calls got more heated as relatives took sides and old family conflicts came back up. By the end of the week, our extended family was split into 2 camps. Some supported holding Michael accountable, while others thought we were being too harsh. Family group texts turned into arguments with people bringing up grievances from years ago. The unity we'd had at the Easter intervention was completely gone now. 3 days later, I was waiting in the pickup line at Lily's school when I spotted Michael's car pulling into the visitor parking lot. My stomach dropped as I watched him get out without his cane, walking perfectly normal toward the playground where kids were lining lining up. I grabbed my phone and started recording while texting the principal's office that we had an emergency situation. Other parents were staring as Michael approached the fence, calling out to Lily, who looked confused seeing him there. The yard monitor intercepted him asking if he was on the pickup list, and I heard him say he just wanted to say hi to his daughter. I kept recording everything while walking over, my hands shaking but determined to document this violation of our agreement. Several other parents came over asking if I needed help, and I asked them to please remember what they were seeing for court purposes. The principal arrived within minutes and escorted Michael back to his car while I wrote down every parent's name who witnessed him trying to make contact. That afternoon, Alistair reviewed my footage and immediately started drafting emergency motions for restraining orders and temporary custody arrangements. He filed everything electronically that same day and got us on the court calendar for the following week. The court clerk called to confirm our hearing date and warned me these emergency hearings could get intense, but I told her I had documentation of everything. 2 days later, Eva Bianchi from Michael's company called while I was making dinner. She explained they'd been investigating his FMLA paperwork and found major problems with his doctor's notes that didn't match any actual medical records. The signatures were forged and the medical license numbers didn't exist in any database they could find. She said they were suspending him immediately pending termination proceedings, which meant his paychecks would stop within days. I thanked her for letting me know and hung up feeling sick about our finances getting even worse. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with every bill and bank statement spread out, creating the strictest budget possible. Rent was non-negotiable at $1,500. Utilities ran about $200. Groceries I could cut to $300 if we ate lots of rice and beans. Car insurance, gas, phone bills, everything got listed and analyzed for any possible cuts. The Disney fund jar sat empty on the counter, reminding me of all the dreams we'd given up for his fake treatments. I counted out our remaining cash and divided it into envelopes for each essential expense, knowing there was nothing left for anything extra. The next morning, Michael's mother showed up at my door looking older than I'd ever seen her. She started crying the moment I opened the door, saying she knew something was wrong for years, but always made excuses for him. She told me about times he'd lied as a teenager and she'd covered for him, times he'd stolen from relatives and she'd paid them back quietly. Her guilt was real, but I couldn't comfort her when I was barely keeping myself together for my kids. She left after 20 minutes still crying, and I felt nothing but exhaustion watching her go. Later that week, Alistair's investigator called with interesting news about the fake counseling charges. He'd traced the payments to a company called Luxury Escapes that specialized in high-end travel packages, with discrete billing names for clients who needed to hide expenses. They were already cooperating with authorities about similar fraud cases and had records of every trip Michael booked through them. The investigator said this evidence would really strengthen our case since it showed deliberate deception and planning over 18 months. Meanwhile, Tara was on the phone with her credit card companies trying to dispute the charges. She managed to get chargebacks on the last 3 months of payments, about $9,000 total, but anything older was past the dispute window. She texted me that at least it was something, and she was grateful to get any of it back. The hardest part came when I had to tell the kids the truth about their dad. Janie had coached me through exactly what to say, but my voice still shook as I sat them down in the living room. I explained that Daddy wasn't really sick and had been telling lies to all of us for a long time. Jake just stared at the floor, but Lily immediately asked if this meant we could go to Disney now since Daddy didn't need medicine anymore. I had to tell her we actually had less money now because of all the lies, and watched her face crumble as she processed that information. She ran to her room and slammed the door while Jake asked quietly if Daddy was going to jail. I said I didn't know, but we were safe and everything would be okay eventually, even though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. That weekend, I noticed Michael posting on social media about going through mental health struggles and needing support during a difficult time. He never mentioned the fraud or fake illness, just vague statements about depression and anxiety that made him sound like the victim. Friends started texting me, asking what was happening and if the family was okay. Some of them had already heard rumors and wanted to know the truth, but I didn't have the energy to explain everything individually. Alistair helped me write a brief statement that stuck to basic facts without getting emotional or accusatory. We kept it simple, saying Michael had been dishonest about medical issues and misused family money, that we were separated and handling it through legal channels. I sent it to close friends and family who needed to know, and it felt good to finally tell the truth instead of keeping his secrets anymore. 2 weeks later, I sat in the courthouse waiting room with my hands shaking while Alistair reviewed our documents one more time. The custody hearing lasted 3 hours with the judge asking detailed questions about Michael's fake illness and the money he'd stolen. I showed her every piece of evidence we'd collected, including the travel photos and bank statements, and watched her face get harder with each page. She granted me primary custody right there in the courtroom, with Michael getting supervised visits twice a week at a family center downtown. Michael's lawyer tried to argue for more time, but the judge cut him off, saying the evidence of deception was overwhelming. Michael's email blaming his fake illness on being stressed from pretending to be sick? That's some circular logic that makes me wonder if he actually believes his own stories at this point. Walking out of that courthouse felt like the first real victory in months, even though Michael glared at me the whole way to the parking lot. That night, Jake showed me his phone with tears in his eyes because his dad had texted him directly, even though the court order said no contact except during visits. The message said Mommy was confused and Daddy was really sick, but the doctors just couldn't find what was wrong yet. I took screenshots of everything and sent them straight to Alistair, who filed an immediate violation report with the court. Jake asked if his dad would go to jail for texting him, and I had to explain that probably not, but it would help us keep everyone safe. The next morning, Tara called with news that made my stomach drop because she'd been going through old bank statements and found withdrawals from Michael's grandmother's care account. Every month for the past 2 years, $500 had been moved to an account we couldn't trace yet. yet. The family started arguing about whether to tell Grandma, who was 93 and already confused most days. Michael's mom said it would kill her to know her grandson stole from her, but Uncle Tony said she had a right to know where her money went. We decided to wait until we had more proof before making any decisions about telling her. Meanwhile, Eva from Michael's company called with shocking news about his work situation. She'd been reviewing his FMLA paperwork and discovered the doctor's signatures were forged on every single form. The handwriting expert they hired confirmed Michael had signed the doctor's name himself, which was a federal crime. She said the company was referring everything to prosecutors and would be firing Michael immediately for gross misconduct. I asked if this meant jail time, and she said it was possible, but would depend on what the prosecutor decided to do. The termination letter arrived at our house 2 days later, even though Michael hadn't lived there for weeks. I forwarded it to his mother's house where he was staying, and tried not to think about how this would affect child support. That weekend, I drove to the pawn shop where I'd sold grandmother's pearls just to look at them one more time. They were still in the case, priced at $1,200, which was 3 times what they'd given me for them. The owner recognized me and said I could have them back for $800 as a special deal, but that was still our grocery money for the month. I took a photo of them sitting there in the case and left without saying anything else because some things just can't be fixed. Michael's first supervised visit happened the following Tuesday at the family center downtown. The kids came home upset because he'd spent the whole 2 hours trying to convince them he was really sick. The supervisor had to redirect him 5 times according to the report she gave me afterward. She wrote down everything, including how he told Lily that Mommy didn't understand his illness and asked Jake to tell the judge Daddy needed medicine. Both kids said they didn't want to go back, but the court order meant they had to keep going twice a week. Tara started coming over after school to watch the kids while I picked up extra shifts at work. We worked out a whole schedule where she'd pick them up and help with homework while I worked until 7 or 8 at night. It was exhausting, but the extra money meant we could keep the lights on and buy real food instead of just pasta every night. She never asked for anything in return, and said helping us was helping her heal from what Michael did to her too. The big family meeting happened on a Sunday at Michael's mom's house with 20 relatives crammed into her living room. Half of them thought we should support Michael because everyone makes mistakes and deserves forgiveness. The other half wanted him to face real consequences for stealing from family. Uncle Tony and his brother got into a shouting match about whether addiction to lying was a real disease or just an excuse. Michael's cousin said we were being too hard on him and that marriage was about standing by each other. I realized sitting there that some of these relationships would never recover, and that was okay. Alistair called the next day to say Michael's attorney wanted to start settlement negotiations about the house and custody and debts. They were proposing different arrangements, including Michael keeping the house if he took on all the debt, but Alistair laughed at that one. He said we'd push for maximum protection, which meant I'd keep the house and primary custody, while Michael paid support based on what he could be earning, not what he claimed to earn. The negotiations would take weeks, but at least we were moving forward with dividing everything up legally. 3 days later, Michael's company made it official and fired him with no severance pay, citing gross misconduct and fraud. The letter said he'd violated multiple policies, including falsifying medical documents and misusing company benefits. Without his salary, the child support calculations would be based on imputed income, which meant what he should be able to earn with his education and experience. Alistair said this was actually better for us because the court wouldn't let him claim poverty to avoid paying support. The prosecutor called 2 days later while I was sorting through bills at the kitchen table. She explained they'd reviewed all the evidence and decided to move forward with charges on the fake FMLA paperwork, but couldn't prosecute the fraud against Tara since it was more of a civil matter. I felt my stomach drop as she went through the legal reasons why stealing $54,000 from family wasn't criminal enough for them to pursue. Alistair had warned me this might happen, but hearing it made me want to throw something at the wall. He called right after I hung up with the prosecutor and reminded me that at least Michael would face some consequences for the federal paperwork violations. The court hearing for temporary support happened the following week in a small room that smelled like old coffee and disappointment. Michael showed up in a wrinkled suit claiming he couldn't pay anything since he'd lost his job. The judge looked at his education history and work experience before setting the support amount based on what someone with his background should be earning. Michael stood up so fast his chair fell over and started arguing that he couldn't pay money he didn't have. The judge cut him off mid-sentence and explained that choosing not to work didn't excuse him from supporting his children. I watched Michael's face turn red as the judge signed the order requiring $800 a month starting immediately. The family meeting about Grandma's house took 3 weeks of angry phone calls and text arguments before everyone finally agreed to meet at Uncle Tony's place. Half the cousins didn't even show up because they were so mad about the whole situation. The ones who came spent 2 hours arguing about whether it was fair to punish them for Michael's lies. Michael's mom finally slammed her hand on the table and said the house was going to Tara whether they liked it or not. The signing happened at a title company downtown with only Tara, Michael's mom, and the necessary witnesses present. I heard later that 2 of the cousins had sworn they'd never speak to any of us again. The divide in the family felt like a crack that would never heal, but at least Tara was getting something back. I found the rental house online after looking at dozens of places we couldn't afford. It was smaller than our current home with just 2 bedrooms and a tiny yard, but the rent was half what we'd been paying. I started packing while the kids were at the school, wrapping dishes in newspaper and trying not to cry at how much we were losing. When I picked them up that afternoon, I told them we were going on an adventure to a new house where we'd make new memories. Jake helped me pack his room without complaining, but I saw him carefully wrap his baseball trophies like they were made of glass. Lily asked if Daddy would know where to find us at the new house, and I had to turn away so she wouldn't see my face. The moving day came fast, and we loaded everything into a rented truck with help from Tara and my mom. Janie had been meeting with the kids twice a week at her office near near the school. She used games and art projects to help them talk about their feelings without making it feel like therapy. Jake had stopped asking about medical things completely and didn't offer to help when I had a headache anymore. Lily's nightmares about Daddy dying had stopped, and she was sleeping through the whole night for the first time in months. Janie showed me drawings Lily had made of our family where Michael was colored in black, while the rest of us were bright colors. She explained this was normal for kids processing betrayal, and that both children were making good progress. The sessions cost money we didn't have, but Janie had worked out a sliding scale payment plan based on our situation. My mom and I sat in the financial advisor's office looking at spreadsheets that made my head hurt. The second mortgage payment was eating up most of her Social Security and pension money every month. The advisor suggested renting out her spare bedroom to help cover the payments until we could figure out something better. Mom didn't want strangers in her house, but agreed it was better than losing it completely. We put ads online that week and started interviewing potential renters who seemed confused why a nice older lady needed a roommate. Mom told them her daughter was going through a divorce and left it at that. Michael's attorney called Alistair asking if I'd write a letter supporting Michael getting into a treatment program for compulsive lying and spending problems. Alistair put it on speaker so I could hear the whole request about how Michael wanted to get better and needed family support. So Michael's lawyer wants her to write a support letter for his treatment program? After everything, the forged documents, stealing from grandma, traumatizing the kids, now he needs her help to look good for court. I told Alistair I wouldn't stop him from getting help, but I wasn't going to write any letters either. Michael could figure out his own treatment without using me as a character reference after everything he'd done. The separation agreement took another month of back and forth negotiations before we finally had something both sides could accept. I kept primary custody and most of the house equity, but had to take on the credit card debt from when I thought we were paying for treatments. It wasn't fair, but Alistair said it gave us stability, and that was worth more than fighting over every dollar. The signing happened at Alistair's office with Michael avoiding eye contact the entire time. His hand shook as he signed the papers, and I noticed he'd lost weight since the restaurant confrontation. Part of me felt sorry for him until I remembered the kids asking why Daddy didn't live with us anymore. Michael started his court-ordered program at a behavioral health center across town 2 weeks later. The judge required compliance reports every month that would determine if he could have longer visits with the kids. The first report said he was participating but had trouble accepting responsibility for his actions. The supervisor noted he kept trying to explain why his lies were actually attempts to protect his family. Eva sent a thick envelope by certified mail with copies of everything from Michael's termination file. The investigation report detailed every fake document and false claim he'd submitted over 2 years. She'd highlighted sections showing when he'd claimed to be at medical appointments while his company credit card showed beach resort charges. The cover letter said the company had provided everything to prosecutors and wished me luck with the divorce proceedings. I filed it all in a binder labeled evidence that was getting thicker every week. Tara showed up at my door the next morning with boxes and trash bags, saying she was done with Michael forever. She blocked his number while sitting at my kitchen table, then deleted him from social media and threw away every photo she had of him. Her new boyfriend didn't know the whole story yet, and she wanted to keep it that way for now. I drove to the pawn shop that afternoon to check on grandmother's pearls one more time, but the owner shook his head before I even asked. Someone bought them 2 days ago, and he couldn't give me their information even if he wanted to. The pearls were gone forever, and I sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to accept that some things couldn't be fixed. That Sunday, we all went to Mom's house for dinner, and it felt different without the weight of Michael's lies hanging over us. Jake helped set the table while Lily showed Mom her new drawings, and we ate pot roast without anyone asking about medical appointments or treatment schedules. Mom told her silly knock-knock jokes that made the kids giggle until milk came out Jake's nose, and we all laughed harder than we had in months. These simple moments felt more valuable than any vacation Michael ever stole money to take. I spent the next week writing out every detail of how we'd handle the kids going forward. Pickup times, drop-off locations, who pays for what, how we'd communicate about school events, what happened if someone was sick, emergency contacts, holiday schedules. Everything went into a document that ran 15 pages. Alistair reviewed it and suggested a few changes before we filed it with the court. Having everything written down helped me stop worrying about what Michael might try to pull next. The kids found their old savings jar in the closet, and Lily asked if we could start saving again, but for something fun this time. Jake suggested we change the label from Daddy's Medicine to Fun Family Trip, and they spent an hour decorating a new label with markers and stickers. They dropped in the quarters from their piggy banks, and I added a $5 bill from my wallet. Watching them get excited about saving for something real instead of a lie felt like progress. 6 months had passed since that Easter brunch when everything exploded. I woke up one morning and realized I hadn't cried in 3 weeks, and I was falling asleep without taking the anxiety pills the doctor prescribed. The nightmares about Michael dying had stopped because there was no dying Michael to worry about anymore. My body was learning to relax again after 2 years of constant panic. Michael's supervisor sent monthly reports showing he was going to therapy twice a week and attending his behavioral program. The kids saw him every other Saturday for 4 hours at the Supervised Visitation Center and came home talking about playing board games and doing puzzles. They seemed calmer around him now that nobody was pretending he was sick. Jake even said it was easier to have fun with Dad when they didn't have to worry about hurting him. The property transfer went through, and Tara wanted to celebrate even though we were both broke. We went to the diner down the street and ordered burgers and fries, toasting with our water glasses when the waitress wasn't looking. We talked about everything except Michael, and for an hour it felt like we were just two friends having dinner instead of fraud victims trying to rebuild. My new job at the medical billing company started 3 weeks later, and the benefits package included health insurance that covered therapy for the whole family. The deductible was low and the copays were manageable, and Janie could keep seeing us every week without me having to choose between therapy therapy and groceries. My boss understood I had kids and court dates and didn't make me feel guilty about leaving early sometimes. The stability felt strange after years of chaos. The prosecutor called Alistair with news about the FMLA fraud case. Michael agreed to plead guilty in exchange for 2 years probation and 300 hours of community service instead of jail time. He'd have a federal conviction on his record forever and would have to pay fines, but he wouldn't be locked up. Part of me wanted him in prison, but Alistair reminded me that probation meant steady child support payments. The plea deal papers arrived a week later, and I read through them 3 times. 2 weeks after signing those papers, I found myself browsing the community college website at midnight while the kids slept. The online business administration program cost less than one of Michael's fake treatments, and I could complete assignments after bedtime. I filled out the application using my mom's address for the transcripts, since our mail situation was still messy. Mom started coming over Tuesday and Thursday evenings to watch the kids while I attended virtual classes on my laptop at the kitchen table. She'd make them dinner and help with homework while I took notes about accounting principles and management theories. Jake would peek around the corner sometimes and ask if I was doing homework too, and I'd nod and show him my notebook full of equations. The first test came back with a B+, and Mom hung it on her fridge like I was 7 years old again. Michael's mother started sending birthday cards to the kids with $20 bills tucked inside about 3 months into our new routine. The first one arrived for Jake's birthday in September, with a note saying she was thinking of him. I left the envelope on the counter and told him it was his choice whether to open it or throw it away. He stared at it for 2 days before carefully opening it and reading the card 3 times. When Lily's card came in November, she asked Jake what he did with his, and he said he kept the money but didn't write back. She decided to do the same thing, and we talked about how it's okay to accept gifts without owing anything in return. The camping trip happened almost exactly a year after that Easter brunch disaster. I'd saved up vacation days and found a state park 2 hours away with a lake and hiking trails. The cabin rental cost $80 for 3 nights, and we packed sandwiches and hot dogs to cook over the fire. Jake caught his first fish, and Lily collected rocks she swore were diamonds. We roasted marshmallows and told ghost stories, and nobody mentioned Disney once. On the second night, Lily said the stars looked prettier here than at home, and Jake agreed this was better than any theme park. The lake water was cold, but they swam anyway, shrieking and splashing while I watched from the shore taking pictures with my phone. Michael finally got hired at a logistics company 6 months after losing his other job. The pay was half what he made before, but the court adjusted the support order based on his actual income instead of potential earnings. The first payment showed up in my account like clockwork, and even though it was only $400, the consistency meant I could budget properly. Every month it arrived on the 15th, and I'd transfer it straight to the kids' college savings accounts I'd opened. Tara brought someone to Sunday dinner at Mom's house about 8 months after everything fell apart. His name was David, and he worked at the library and didn't know anything about our family drama. She looked nervous introducing him, but he fit right in, helping Mom in the kitchen and playing cards with the kids. Later, she told me she'd been seeing him for 3 months, but wanted to be sure before bringing him around family. I watched her laugh at his jokes without that guarded look she'd developed and knew she was learning to trust again. The apartment became available right before the kids started the new school year. 2 bedrooms in a better district, walking distance to the elementary school. The settlement money covered first and last month's rent, plus the security deposit. Jake helped me measure the rooms and plan where furniture would go while Lily drew pictures of how she wanted to decorate. Moving day was chaos with just Mom's pickup truck and Tara's SUV, but we managed everything in 4 trips. Michael's behavioral health reports keep saying he can't accept responsibility while he tells everyone his lies were meant to protect his family. His supervisor must see right through that excuse every session. Lily taped her camping trip drawings all over her walls instead of the Disney princess posters she used to have. She said the pictures of the lake and trees made her happy because they were real memories, not pretend ones. That quiet evening came in October when I was folding laundry and both kids were doing homework at the kitchen table. Jake looked up from his math worksheet and said my face looked different now, not so tired and worried all the time. Lily added that our new life felt more real because nobody was pretending anymore. Jake said he was glad we knew the truth even though finding out was hard because lies make everything feel weird and scary. They went back to their homework like they hadn't just summed up 2 years of therapy in a few sentences. Standing in our small kitchen that night, I looked around at our life and realized what we'd built from the ruins. Bills paid on time without choosing between groceries and medicine. Kids sleeping through the night without nightmares about daddy dying. Relationships with family based on truth instead of elaborate performances. The apartment was smaller than our old house, but it was ours. Earned honestly. The camping trip photos on the fridge meant more than any luxury vacation built on lies. We hadn't just survived Michael's betrayal, we'd discovered that truth and safety created more happiness than any amount of stolen money ever could. That's gonna wrap it up for today, folks. Thanks for hanging out with me and letting me wonder about all these interesting moments. It's been fun sharing questions together. Until we meet again, if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.